Today we're going to take a look at the Nike Zoom X Pegasus 41 releasing in June, $130. It's a significant update to the venerable Pegasus with 4 millimeters more stack height, a new engineered mesh upper, and most significantly, a new ReactX midsole foam, which has a lower carbon footprint and more energy return. Yes, the Air Zoom units remain. Let's see how it all turned out. Hello everybody, Sam from RoadTrailRun. Today we're going to take a look at the Nike ReactX Pegasus 41, 41st edition of this venerable daily trainer, which quite frankly has pretty much stayed the same over many versions. But here Nike is trying to shake things up. And what they've done here is they have a new injection molded ReactX foam midsole, and they've added 4 millimeters of stack height, front and back. We're still a 10 millimeter drop. The weight here only goes up 0.4 of an ounce in my US 8.5 to 9.68 ounces, 274 grams US 9. So we're still below the magic, what I call the magic 10 ounce for a daily trainer. So the Pegasus, other than changing uppers in various ways, has pretty much stayed the same. But here, Nike is really shaking things up with this ReactX foam. The ReactX foam is, and I'll show you this little card here, it's 43% lower carbon footprint as it is now injection molded instead of compression molded as React foam was before. And it has 13% more energy return than React foam. And that's a good thing because React foam was firm, dense, added in the AirPods, the Air Zoom units, and we still have front and back here. And it was the recent Pegasus were really dated compared to what's going on in the market. So real curious to see how this new version performs. I took them out for a mile last night, mile and a half, and things are looking much better than what I remember of prior Pegasus, and much better than the Infinity RN4 here we tested earlier last year, which was a very heavy shoe. It'll broader platform, no air, same ReactX foam. So I wasn't optimistic, but I think what's going on here is when you combine the ReactX foam with air units, which provide the kind of the response and the pop, you get to some neat new things that rejuvenates this wonderfully historic shoe. So you can see the geometry is quite streamlined here. Test the 40, I didn't bother, but we did test and review it. I did run the 39. I particularly note here the medial side. This is really definitely a neutral shoe. You can see what they've done in terms of carving out the medial side. It's no vertical sidewalls or more vertical sidewalls as before. And you can also see how the outsole has changed. Here is a view of the 40. You can see we have more lateral coverage and less medial coverage. So this makes the shoe really quite flexible, more flexible than I remember before. Remember, we have an air unit here, so it's nice and flexible. The upper, very simple upper here. I'm going to take them out on the run, give you impressions from the run, on the fit, the ride. But this is a simple engineered mesh, nothing fancy. There is a gusset tongue. The tongue is quite puffy, but not too ridiculous. We have of course, the raised, quite firm heel counter, and the foot does sit down in the rear. So the 37 millimeter heel, now 4 millimeters more, is a little bit of an optical illusion because we do sit down. You can see we have sort of a squared off profile at the rear. What I also noticed, even in the short run, is that I think we also have, with the flexibility, a bit of a rocker here. So along with the ReactX and our air units, We've got what feels so far like a very agile shoe, not as stiff, rigid as Pegasus of before, modernized. Back to the upper, no more fly wires. This is just a very simple upper. The panels you can see here are a denser weave for support, and we have them on both sides. In terms of the fit, very friendly here. We'll see how it holds when I pick up the pace a bit. And if you have if you have wider feet, of course, there'll be many wider versions available. So I'm looking forward to taking it out here. It's raining right now, but I'll be headed out in a few. Stay tuned. Okay, trotting along Chapel Lane here. Beautiful flowers. We're gonna stop at the little chapel and I'm gonna share some thoughts about the fit. But so far the ride is true Pegasus, but with more bounce, especially off the heel. So let's stop here and talk a bit about the fit. My usual 8.5, usual with Nike, true to size, and usual kind of low toe box, but not a bother. We've got a fairly conventional mesh, a little bit of stretch. You can see not much toe bumper. Foot is really well secured up front. Midfoot, again, we have the gusset tongue. We have those panels, very well secured. Wouldn't call this a motion control shoe, but it's not too bad. It's a fully neutral shoe, as you can see the carve out at the on the medial side, but it's stable enough. And then the heel, usual, very solid heel hold here. Firm heel cup, relatively high. Again, typical Nike, so we're going to keep going. But in terms of first thoughts about the ride, more cushion, a little more bounce. The more cushion bounce is really felt at the heel. The drop of 10 millimeters, still 10 millimeters is felt. You're plunged forward onto the front air unit, which gives you the response. Feels a bit thin as the others did, but less punishing so far than prior Pegasus. So the extra 4 millimeters is really helping, but hasn't really changed the overall character, just modernized. Trotting along Route 1A, about 10-minute pace, picking it up nice and energetic off the heel. Nice plunge forward. A lot of nice flexibility that makes them feel very agile, quick. Though they're not a light shoe, they're not a race shoe. So there are two kinds of reaction in this shoe. Number one is the ReactX foam, which definitely has more kind of firmer rubbery bounce than before. And the other thing clearly is the Air Zoom units, which really provide the pop, especially on toe off. You really feel them kicking in. So instead of sinking in and trying to bounce, you pop off the AirPod. At the heel, the AirPod or the Air unit feels like it's providing a touch of stability and also some pop off the heel. You won't mistake this for a max cushion shoe, but the flexibility and kind of the agility in that pop is kind of unusual these days. If you take, for example, the Asics Gel Cumulus, quite stiff, almost like a plate. Same with the Puma Velocity Nitro 3. So you don't really have shoes that kind of combine flexibility with response, where the foam isn't very firm. Here it's relatively soft, but that our air unit really gives it the kick. Okay, everybody, back from my run, 6.3 miles, a bit more than 10 kilometers, about 9:53 pace, and I stopped a lot, as you can see, for pictures. So a few conclusions now about our Pegasus 41. Nike has stayed true to the Pegasus legacy here, but they've modernized it quite significantly. More stack, so we got more cushion. The ReactX has more energy return. They say 13%. It feels at least as much as that. It's still a 10 millimeter drop shoe, and it feels like it. You really feel pushed forward, and then you get a really nice, and you can see after now 7-8 miles, you have a nice flexible forefoot. It looks thin. It feels a bit thin, but it's agile and kind of quick feeling, kind of unfamiliar these days, where so many shoes either have a plate or they have lots more stack than the 27 here up front. So there's a feeling of agility. The bottom platform is not super wide, the midfoot neither. So you've got a shoe that really likes the move. I also noticed, as you can see here, the carve out on the medial side. That tended to have me kind of driving to the big toe to toe off, which is something Nike did in the original Vaporfly really well. So there's like a forward motion here, drop plus the geometry. Who is it good for? Well, I would say it's a very good shoe for the beginner who isn't running a ton of miles. It's a great shoe for your kind of faster track workouts, kind of all around stuff. If you need just one shoe and you're not running huge miles. It's also still, even with its new upper, which I think is really effective, given its grip, a pretty darn good shoe for light trails. I didn't run any trails yet, but I'm sure it'll be fine for that. Value, $130, still very reasonable. And now a higher stacked with a newer foam. What would I like to see? Well, I guess we can all dream maybe the same shoe with Zoom X to bring down the weight and give it even more pop. I think that would work really well if they could incorporate also the air units instead of a plate. Last, about the air units. Well, the air units here, given that our foam is quite soft, rubbery, kind of bouncy, provide the response and the pop in the shoe and some of the stability along with the outsole. So there's definitely a react, and it's more, for me, from the air unit than the foam in the air units, because the heel is also quite reactive. I wouldn't call it for most a long run shoe. You can go over to the Vomero for that, or a recovery shoe. Again, the Vomero. I would personally, as I said, didn't care for the Infinity RN4. Way too soft. But if you just go for mellow runs, that's a good Nike. Now in comparison, well, there are very few shoes left. 10 millimeter drop, no plate, relatively conventional but updated foam. Shoes that come to mind, the Cumulus 26, which now is kind of snappier and firmer actually than the 25, which was a bit closer to this. The Puma Velocity Nitro number 3, stiffer, definitely stiffer. It has a lower layer of conventional EVA foam, and then the Nitro above, a bit more stable for sure. In Saucony, I guess the most comparable might be the Ride, although here we have a more kind of agile, lower feeling forefoot and more drop. That is my review. We're going to have a full multi-tester written review over on RoadTrailRun.com. Another shoe to compare it to, before I forget, the Pegasus Trail 5. Same ReactX foam, similar upper, flywire-like, and a new outsole that's supposed to be grippier. We have a review of that as well. So that's another great one to consider. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great run.